What's happening, Hardscapers? This is episode 280 of the How to Hardscape podcast, where we talk about how you can start and grow your hardscaping business. And on today's episode, we have our last year in review episode. We'll be going over sales and marketing from 6 different guests that we've had on the show this year. And we've had some amazing guests, some returning guests as well, which will be shown mostly in this episode. Typically, these are around 10-minute segments from their episode. And you should definitely go back and check their episodes where we take these 10-minute segments from 2024. And the reason why we do the year in review at this time of year is because we just hit our 5-year anniversary. We started this podcast mid-October in 2019, and now this is our 5-year anniversary going on here. So thank you to everyone for sticking around for 5 years. Thank you to those that are just listening. Definitely go back and listen to the entire catalog because these are evergreen episodes. They're always going to be valuable. They're not event-based or anything like that, so you can definitely go back, check out all of the episodes starting from the very beginning up until now, and I hope that you get some sort of value from them. But before we get into today's episode, let's thank our sponsors. Cycle CPA. And if you're looking for bookkeeping, accounting, CFO services, reach out to Cycle CPA at cyclecpa.com. Let them know How to Hardscape sent you for money off their services there. Knowledge Tree Consulting. If you are looking for somebody to help you in your business, I would highly recommend Knowledge Tree Consulting. They are efficiency consultants in our industry, and you've heard them on the podcast multiple times before. George and Peter of Oriole Landscaping, and George a couple of other times talking about various topics, and we'll definitely have George on in the future to talk more. But you can learn more about them at knowledgetreeconsulting.com. And if you're looking for a software to dive into, the How to Hardscape headquarters software can help you budget, estimate job costs, time track, schedule, and so much more that we've got in the works, including our installation training courses. If you're looking to get into hardscaping or train your employees on hardscaping, we've got the interlocking concrete pavement course, segmental retaining wall course, and many other courses available, including budgeting, estimating, and knowing your numbers, which features Cycle CPA going over a profit and loss statement and a balance sheet for your business. And you can check that out at members.howtohardscape.com or send me a message at howtohardscape on Instagram. And without further ado, let's get into today's episode. This is Greg Crabtree on 4 types of business capital from his book, Simple Numbers 2.0. I want to now turn the page to some notes that I've got from Simple Numbers 2.0 that we didn't get to touch on our previous interview. Yep. The 4 types of capital. We've got trade, infrastructure, buffer, and launch capital. And then the capital signature of the business. Can we do somewhat deep dive into this and your
absolutely.
thoughts on this, especially for considering our industry here with landscape construction, landscapers, project-based businesses?
Yeah, let's knock out the 2 easy ones. So buffer capital is essentially what I refer to as the core capital target in both books, of where I need 2 months of operating expenses in cash, which means every expense that I pay every month that I don't get terms on. So generally, we just look at all your labor and all your OPEX and don't count cost of goods sold. So you just want kind of an average of 2 months of those operating expenses. And so our basic health diagnostic for capitalization is I need 2 months of operating expenses in cash with 0 drawn on a line of credit. And if I have that, I'm a fully capitalized business. And I will tell you, there is a vast difference in the profitability and the capability of a business that's fully capitalized versus one that's highly leveraged. Now, highly leveraged is I can get away with it, and it's one of those that, Nicholas Taleb, who wrote Fooled by Randomness and Black Swan. I mean, he tells a story about, being a trader on Wall Street, and these guys that would beat him, he'd get frustrated. But then about every 5 or 6 years, he'd see them busted out on the street, and where they got away with it for 5 or 6 years. And he tells a story that's kind of dark, but he says, it's kind of like playing Russian roulette, in that, you stick a gun to your head and spin the chamber. Well, if you playing it for $100,000 a pull, you might get up to $1 million a head. but you eventually have a bullet going through your brain. And what good was that? And so in business, we have a lot of distortion of thought because somebody got in, had a run with leverage, and got out before that bullet went through their head. And that becomes part of the business lore of, oh, that's how you do it. Well, yeah, unless that chamber hits earlier for you than it did for them, and no, it didn't work. And once again, you're not in control of all situations. And if one thing COVID taught us is there's things we haven't even thought of, that can impact business. And it's like, okay, well, and even if you're fully capitalized, it's still, I mean, you could run into a situation that doesn't matter how capitalized you are, the business won't succeed.
Absolutely. So that's
So
buffer capital there.
That's buffer capital. Second one is infrastructure capital, which is really simple in that it's your fixed assets minus book depreciation, not tax. And now a lot of folks on this listening to this your accountant will slug the tax depreciation number in there. But think of it as the value of your production equipment. I mean, if you got a production truck, trailer, I mean, backhoe, whatever, those things have value. And you look at that net of the debt that you use to buy it. And so so one of the ways that I can bring my capital infrastructure cost down is attach direct borrowing, to that piece of production equipment and lower that capital requirement. And so those two are fairly simple. So essentially what I'm doing is I'm taking the balance sheet and I'm connecting an asset to the liability that the two connect to each other. Same with buffer capital, taking cash, connecting it to line of credit. And your cash minus line of credit is your net cash number. And so that's why we want you to be at zero, obviously. But the third one, trade capital, I think is the magic number that we see a lot of variance within an industry. And so think of trade capital, especially for your audience. It is accounts receivable, work in progress, inventory if you carry some things, minus accounts payable, and minus deferred revenue if you get that complex of taking deposits and booking it on the balance sheet. So it's the net of those things that turn over month in and month out. The weakness of accounting is we separate those things on two different sides of the balance sheet and we talk about them individually, but we don't connect them together to show you a connected net number because they're dynamic. They go up and they go down and they go sideways. And so what we've started doing, since I came up with the concept, is we look at it as a net number. And so the first thing that shocks most people is if that net number is a positive number, that means that's the cash you are having to leave in the business. So you get an entrepreneur's attention when you show them how much cash that you got to put in the business just to make a transaction happen. And can we think about that a different way? Can I get better about billing quicker? Can I get better about asking for a deposit up front? Can I get better at working with my vendors to get better terms? And all of those things matter. And so as we work with them to get that net number, we start to compare it as a percentage of rolling 12 revenue. So think of it, kind of the pace of revenue you're on a last 12-month basis. And so, and when you look at it that way, you can actually create a very quick calculation of, are you a burn cash when you grow business? Are you a create cash when you grow business? So if my trade capital as a percentage to revenue averages 10% and I'm at 5% profit, I burn 5% cash to grow. And so I got to go through a season to put the crop in the ground to then finally start harvesting it in the next season. Versus if I invert those two, I got trade capital of 5%, I got profit of 10%. I'm producing cash with every new transaction because everything is cash flow positive. And we've seen, because essentially I look for things, okay, you can get lost in all the technical data, but I'm looking for the data that I can capture your mind with that makes you act differently. And this has been something that as we show that number to clients month after month after month on our monthly update calls, it's like, they kind of nod their head, yeah, they get it. No, they have to watch it for a couple of months, and then once it sets in and the light bulb goes off, you start to see them suddenly grow some backbone to ask for the deposit up front. They grow some backbone to build, get projects closed faster and build so that it's not hanging out and work in progress. You go to your vendors and say, hey, can I get 15 more days? Yeah, and are we good? And all of those things matter. And but once you see it in a repetitive delivery of data, to compare to, is it getting better? Is it getting worse? It's amazing. People do respond to it, that's all I'm about, is what can I show you to get you to act in your best interest? And that's been a really cool thing. And so then when you look at the capital signature of a business, you look at, of those three components, some businesses, the hardest business to capitalize is if I have to carry AR and inventory. That's the lowest return on invested capital business model that exists.
Right.
If I carry one of the two, I get a little bit more. But if I can not have to carry inventory and not have to carry AR, I get paid at service or in advance of service. Those are the lightning quick, financially structured businesses that can really hum. Now, if an industry works that way, there's a low financial barrier to entry. There may be a technical barrier to entry, but there's a low financial barrier. So having AR and inventory or work in progress is a financial barrier to competitors, but it kills you from a return. I'd rather have the competitors than the lower return on invested capital. But now there's the fourth one, but it's not on the balance sheet. And this is the conundrum. This is where the accounting profession has fallen flat on its face to help the entrepreneur understand, how do you grow a business? And the vast majority of businesses that grow invest on the P&L, not on the balance sheet. Well, what do I mean by investing on the P&L? Think of it like this. You're going to you decide you're going to really blow up the viewership of the podcast, which means you're going to spend $100,000 to expand the marketing of it and drive viewership. Well, nobody stuck a gun to your head to make you do that, and so it was a choice. It was discretion. And oh, well, you got 100,000. Well, yeah, we probably actually need to hire a marketing person that will help manage that. So that's $60,000 of a marketing admin, maybe. That's 160,000. Once again, those are two costs that are I should exclude them from my operating performance as I analyze the business, because it's spending $1 to diminish profit today to get to someplace different in the future. And so we've come up with some creative ways to isolate those expenses, hold them below the net operating income line, but yet see the cumulative impact of the diminishment of profitability, because I'm making spending choices in expenses to grow the business. And our job is to hold you accountable and say, well, is it working? How long are you going to do this before you stop it and do something different? I'm not against you spending the money, but it needs to have results. And our clients who do product development, I mean, they love to make a new product rather than sell the one they have. It's like, well, okay, that's great, but if you spend $100,000 in product development for the next new product, where is the $50,000 of annual gross margin to pay for that $100,000 that I invested? That's kind of our rule of thumb, is I want $50,000 of incremental, 50% incremental impact of what I spent within a 12 to 24 month period is kind of the ideal of a good launch capital investment. And if it takes longer than 12 to 24 months to come to fruition, you're playing a different game, and that you're really just making some high stakes poker bets, and you get away with it sometimes, but you also die sometimes.
Right.
And it's like, and if that's your choice, I would suggest betting something you can afford to lose, and go for it, but we're going to be honest with ourselves about the risk profile. What are the odds of this working? And to me, that's business.
This is George Rivari of Knowledge Tree Consulting talking about his experience navigating a recession or recessions and the opportunities that they present. You've been through recessions before in the past. Do recessions typically follow the same type of trend? Are they different from one to the other? In your experience with recessions, what did you feel? How long did you feel it for? And what did it look like on the other side?
So the first was in the 80s, the late 80s, 88, 89, 87, 89. We were too young and too stupid to know, and we just worked harder and worked for less and survived it. Then we had one in 2000, and that was interesting because all of a sudden people delayed making decisions. So the first thing is they had the money, but psychologically, they're like, I'm not going to get my bonus. And a lot of very successful, wealthy people defer their gratification. So even though they could do it, they won't do it. The marginal market where people are borrowing to do things, those people shut down right away because it's an existential threat. And this is where relationships come in. If you've got somebody who you've had a great relationship with, there's a much higher likelihood of them pursuing a deal with you than if they don't know you. And so what we found was those existing clients that we've had over the years are what saved us essentially. Because they have the money, they trust you, and it's not transactional. So on the sales side, always take care of good people. It's one of the golden rules that we have is take care of those good people because they're going to take care of you. And and then 2008 was a bit of a disaster, but we got lucky. Like we literally had no work, and we ended up getting two jobs, one for a gold miner and a copper miner. And of all the things that went up in that recession, commodities went up like gold and copper. So we had some giant projects. So it was actually luck that got us through that one. And now COVID was terrifying as well for a little bit there. We didn't know what was going to happen, but then the government threw money at the problem. So they're all a little bit different. One thing that's constant is the psychology of the buyer. Am I going to hold on to my cash? Am I going to save? Am I going to buy? Or am I going to actually, if I've got cash, negotiate you to death to get the best deal possible? And so that becomes tough because now you don't have work and people are beating you down. So that's tough, 100% tough.
Going into COVID, I'm sure the obvious thing to do is to say, this isn't going to last forever. What can we do to prepare ourselves coming out of this when things do revert back to normal? And it seems to be like there's a big pullback, but it might just be back to normal. Or the worst side of that is that out of COVID, we get into a recession, which is a possibility. Do you in your thought process on this, do you look at something like, okay, we're in this big boom, let's prepare ourselves coming out of this boom? Or does it not even make sense to kind of time the market like that to be able to prepare yourself? Just kind of go with the flow and adjust as necessary depending on the demand, if that question even makes sense for you.
Yeah, 100%. So I'm going to get to that. One last factor is the stock market.
Okay.
So right now the stock market's at all-time highs there's maybe 7 companies that are holding the market at all-time highs. So there's still people that are feeling confident because of the stock market, despite all the other gloom and doom. And so hopefully that leg doesn't fall. And so then back to your question is, so I'm a big believer in being proactive. Most people are reactive. So reactive behavior is tactical. Proactive behavior is strategic. And so the second leg of the stool is recession to operations. Well, in the operations realm, essentially I want to be lean. I don't want to have too much equipment. I don't want to have stuff lying around. The amount of money that people have tied up in their operations that's not being fully utilized is crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So I always try to find money in the business before I even work on anything else. Like, what can we sell? What can we get rid of? What can we rent out? What can we do to leverage the existing infrastructure that we have? And most people neglect that. And I think that's the biggest opportunity with the least hassle is streamlining your equipment. So, guess what? You love that piece of equipment, it's paid for, but it's not making you money. It's depreciating actually. And you could rent something for 10,000 bucks and it would be less than the depreciation. And you'd be further ahead. But most people don't see that. They just hold on to their stuff. Or their equipment is falling apart and in disrepair and causing all kinds of headaches, and they hold on to it because it's paid for. So, obviously the leaner your business is, the more competitive you can be. And also we just bought a business called the Cultivated Gardener. So I can actually put it out there. And we liquefied our assets and turned it into cash. So we could actually buy a business. And so, if we didn't have that cash, we'd have to borrow money to do it, which is not great. So we had the cash to buy this business that's positive cash flow. It's a maintenance business. It's actually high-end horticulture with, recurring revenue. Clients sign up every single year. There's an opportunity because we weren't asset heavy on our balance sheet. And sometimes in a recession, the hard thing to do is to sell assets because nobody wants to buy them. So, being lean in your operations, it doesn't matter. The best time to start was 20 years ago. Get lean. So today, tomorrow, get on it right away, and leverage that balance sheet that you have, which is either going to be cash or some asset. Now, if the asset's producing for you beautifully and it's not breaking down, fantastic. But otherwise, it's got to go. And it's like a museum. A lot of people yards are museums. So, or they have duplicates or redundancies or things that don't work properly. So I think the opportunity to clean up your balance sheet with respect to your operations is the first place that I would look for money. And on the opportunity side, I guess, sales are a big opportunity. So we bought a business. And there's going to be all kinds of other businesses to buy. There's going to be amazing talent on the market because people's small businesses, they can't hold up. And, our goal is just to get through the recession. It's not about if we can make money, great. But I'm not really interested in that. I'm actually interested in leaning up and improving through the recession. So for me, it's an opportunity. And, we obviously have to provide great value to our clients. And so when you're carrying all this extra stuff, someone's got to pay for it, and it's usually you and the client. So ideally, the client saves money, you become more competitive. So these recessions are actually huge opportunities for a lot of companies. Like great companies love recessions. And the way to look at it is, let's say you were doing amazing because it's a boom, and then there's a recession, and you do okay, but you actually come out stronger for it on the other side. Then all of a sudden you kill it again. So if you graph improvement, it's not necessarily a linear 45-degree line going up. Sometimes you level off. You might even go down a bit, and then you boom up again. And so I think there's huge opportunities in these recessions, and inevitably they end, and patterns of behavior change. I'm a big believer in also marketing yourself or positioning yourself as the best, because people buy quality in times of distress. And you don't want to take a chance with somebody who's having cash flow problems to do your landscaping and hope that they finish the job. So there's a whole bunch of psychological factors that go into that. And so I think it's very important that that lean mindset, and if you can get out of this, on the other side, you'll be way stronger. And hopefully you don't go back to your bad habits again. Here's an example. So I see people buying, the most expensive fully loaded pickup truck. Why? It doesn't make you money. It depreciates like no tomorrow. It gets you from A to B. It really doesn't do anything else. I mean, I don't know, maybe you don't get a rash on your butt from sitting on that leather seat, whatever it is, but it's just money that's gone. And you could take that savings, say it's $20,000, and put it into a GIC or a bond or something, and you're going to make $1,000 in interest instead of having it tied up in a truck where it's actually getting to be worth less and less. So yeah, the waste, there's the 10 types of waste, and you're trying to get rid of waste wherever you can. And the companies that are the leanest and are proactive tend to do well in recessions, actually. Because
Gotcha.
you're going to pick up contracts where people fail. There's all kinds of opportunities that come out of this.
We want to take a break from today's episode to thank our sponsor, Knowledge Tree Consulting. They are efficiency consultants in the industry with 35 plus years of industry experience building Oriole landscaping in Toronto, which they are completely hands off at this point. George and Peter have been on the podcast before, and George, on multiple occasions now, I've personally leaned on him to help with the How to Hardscape headquarters software and how we can maximize the efficiency of user experience. And I know the guys at DTE Landscaping, Chuck and Jeffrey, who we've also had on the show multiple times, have hired them on in the past. Check out their consulting services, peer groups, and events that are coming up on their website, knowledgetreeconsulting.com, or check them out on Instagram at joinktc. Now back to our episode. This is Mike Andes of Augusta Lawn Care, Copilot CRM on expanding business and marketing. What's the worst piece of advice that you hear from within the industry, outside of the industry? It could be as of late or just over time that you may hear time and time again. What's the worst piece of advice that you would lean people away from?
Ooh. In general, the fastest way to grow your business is service expansion and geographic expansion. And so it is the most surefire way to grow your business is serve more people and just increase your service area and to offer more services. It is also the least profitable way to grow your business and the least scalable way to grow your business. And so I would really push most people there like, oh, this other service I can add this and I can add this, or I'm going to go into this different market. 90% of the time it's a bad move. It's like, again, Alex says this often. It's like, do more and do better before you do new, right? Just keep doing more of the same thing and before you start to figure out some new thing. And so we are quite often in this industry chasing the next new thing, whether it be different services, whether it be, oh man, if this is going to change my business, I'm going to get a certain type of V plow on my truck. Like this type of truck is going to make it, this mower, this excavator. It's like, just do more of the same, do it better, and you'll probably make 10 times more money.
Got it. Now, some people might look on the outside and look into what you're doing and say, well, Mike is, he's got the media team, he's got Copilot, he's got pay for performance. He's doing a lot of different things. Why can't I? Is that just because you've really doubled down and focused on the lawn care, got that to where you wanted it, and then you were able to kind of take on all these other things that you're doing?
Yeah. So everything that I've ever tried that is not inside of home services has failed. And there's a list of them inside the book of stuff that I've done that is not inside of lawn care, and inside of home services. And so every single thing that I currently do serves one avatar, and it's a lawn care business owner. And so because of that, I know the needs of that person very well. I know all their struggles. I went through them and I know their pain points. And so me going and trying to solve the problems of any other customer is a problem. And I'm willing to take the short-term hit that I know comes with distributing my attention between 3 or 4 different things to serve that customer for the 10 to 20 year term of what having vertical integration inside the industry will do. Right. So, yes, we have the software for pay for performance. We have a CRM, we have a franchise, we have the media team, we have lawn care media, we have lawn care web design, which, all these in and of themselves are businesses that could be, your whole attention could be put on them. I know that all together in 10 to 15, 20 years, when robotics, in my opinion, is really where it needs to be at in terms of a technological standpoint, all of that together, I'll be able to dominate if I have them all together. I need a command center with a couple hundred people to be able to operate the robotics remotely and have 10 to 15 years of operational execution so that we can actually roll robotics out. So, we're playing like, I think in general, so for example, like the franchise, it took me 3 years of building the franchise to make the revenue equivalent to what my one location did. And so it was 3 years of slowdown in order for the next thing. And so for the vast majority of people, they should just do more of the thing. Like 99% of people should just do more of the thing. But I have a 20-year horizon, and most people don't. And if they were actually honest with themselves, they don't have a 20-year horizon. And in that case, you just double down and keep doing more of the same because you're looking for an exit in 3 to 5 years. You're wanting to do something else in 5 to 10 years. But like I'm in this for a very long term, and I'm willing to take the kind of the short term hit that's come for like the 15 to 20-year play that we're trying to do. And I know I need to have all these different angles.
And you touched on the client avatar there, and there's a great turnaround that you talked to a roofer, I believe, and it's in the book about they're focusing on the commercial client on their website when really their bread was in the residential, so they needed to retailer that. So that's this conversation is kind of applying to the client avatar, which leads me to my question to you. Your client avatar being a lawn care contractor, is there a time in the near future, in the future that you're planning, and maybe you don't even want to talk about this, that like lawn care is a niche within the home service contractor? Is the next step like, okay, let's go after the home service contractor to help them with their problems for your future there?
Yeah, like 95% of what I talk about is transcends lawn care. Um, and even inside of Copilot, like a good 30% of the users are outside of lawn care and landscaping. However, and even like our conference, yeah, we're doing Blue Collar Summit instead of Landscape Summit. So like we're definitely on the periphery of it. And I think from a brand perspective, it'll move more and more home service because of the offerings. But like I constantly ask myself, like, what problem and pain points do I know and have I experienced? I know lawn care and landscaping. And if there's a bunch of people that will get value out of me like sharing those experiences and they can do a little bit of transposing over to their industry, great. And I think that's like as soon as I get outside of that realm, I'm not at 99.9% of like knowledge. And I think in general, it's like if you want to ask yourself, like, how do you make as much money as possible? You focus on the things that you have a disproportionate advantage against the rest of the market. So if you want to go be a real estate, go invest in real estate, like how much better are you than the average real estate investor? We're like, oh, like I'm good. Like I've done some courses. Okay, great. You're probably like a 60th percentile. Great. Okay, maybe done 10 or 15 deals. You're probably now in like the 95th percentile. Okay, not even like a couple hundred deals. Now you're like the 99th percentile. And so like, why would I go from where I currently feel like I'm probably in the 99.9% percentile in the green industry of like knowing what's going on different levels and seeing it happen over and over again? Why would I go be like, I'm gonna go start a restaurant? Or I'm going to go help like restaurant entrepreneurs, right? And so I think I probably drop a couple percentage points when I go from say lawn care to plumbing, lawn care to pool service. There's a lot of crossover, but I'm not at that expert level. And so I traditionally see when people go way too far down that scope and start giving information, it can get dangerous. And so I just try to stay in my lane as much as possible, knowing that there's more like you've seen on like the turnaround show, there's more and more like a little bit of crossover. You learn other industries, et cetera. But like I just hope that like I don't get out of my lane because then you say stupid stuff.
Gotcha. And I have two questions for you really quickly as we kind of run down on time here. One thing that I really liked was the marketing discussion on in the book, and from what I've heard from you in the past, especially in terms of um, comparing ad spend and you're not necessarily getting the same value out of that ad spend. For example, you get $10 a lead on Facebook, and then you get $50 a lead on Google, but there's intent on that Google, and it's not quite the same value. You'll have to measure what your closing ratio is on those. Is there any platform, especially for your franchises around North America, now in Australia, that you have found is the most valuable platform to you? Or is it just a matter of, what, we're going to test everything every spring rush and see what we need to double down on, because it might change from year into year out?
It changes every year. Um, every single market's a little bit different. We've really gone in on Google and Facebook tracking this year to make sure that everyone knows what their cost per lead is. So like a real quick thing is like when someone fills out an estimate request form, when they click submit, it goes to a different URL, even if it's just like a slash thank you. So that way you can track with a lot of reliability that they actually have submitted a form and they actually are a lead. Much better tracking. So like there's a tactical thing. Um, I would say as like a rule of thumb, you want to test as much as possible. And if you have $5,000, I'd rather you spend it 5 different ways $1,000 a piece and figure out what works and then go all in on it. What I know for certain is that a customer wants an estimate done faster. They want they want it done cheaper. They want it done at a higher quality. So like if we can just focus on that, we will win the game. No one ever said it, like submit an estimate request when we're like, I sure hope this takes 2 or 3 weeks to hear back from them. Right. Well, if they could get in 2 or 3 days, they'd be happy. And if it could be 2 or 3 hours, they'd be happier. And if they could be done in 2 or 3 minutes, they'd be happier. And if they could be done instantly, it'd be the best. And so I just know directionally being correct in these very key fundamentals. Like, can I make a service that's so efficient I can do it for a cheaper price and still have higher profits than my competition? Can I get an estimate to a customer faster than anyone else? If I can do these things, I will forever be true. The same way, like most people want more money, most customers want things done cheaper and they want things done faster, right? Jeff Bezos said this about Amazon, right? So like just be directionally correct on that front. And then the marketing aspects of driving leads to that funnel will only be increased and optimized by just streamlining that funnel by like removing steps of the sales process, getting your instant pricing, doing over the phone estimates instead of in-person estimates, having more estimator availability. These are all like little things you can do to just make sure like any marketing dollars is better spent.
Well, Mike, I appreciate your time and want to respect it. I got millions of questions for you. So if you ever want to come back on the show,
I do have 10 more minutes. If you wanted to keep going, I'm happy.
Okay,
yep,
awesome. In terms of marketing content, what has been valuable for you, especially visual? So let's talk like Facebook ad. What has been especially something that you can recommend to your franchisees to say, hey, this is how we can go? Or is it like a blanket thing that you send to them, Augusta Lawn Care, this is what you want to use in your ad? Or do you kind of direct them to like, hey, have your face in it, do this and have it, go this many seconds if it's a video and so on and so forth there? How do you direct them in terms of that visual marketing content?
Yeah, so two things. Let's go super tactical and then I'll break it down. So first off is if you're going to spend $50 a day on Facebook, for example, don't put it behind one ad. Do 10 different ads at $5 per day and test the creative 10 different times and see which one works. Then take that one out of the 10 that works the best and take 10 more versions of that one. And so in general, like we just don't create enough creative. That's the bottom line. Like as a rule of thumb, for example, like because I've mentioned it already, look at Alex Hormozi's Facebook ads library. He's usually between 200 and 300 ads running at the same time. And every single week they change and they take the best performers and they make 4 or 5 variations of that ad and just keep optimizing it. So first off is more versions of creative, different headlines. The second thing, tactically in terms of like any one of those pieces of content, to break down how the video or the picture or even the text should look is like, number one, you got to hook people in. Like, why should I watch this? The best one in home services is to call out their service area. It's like, attention homeowners in Whatcom County, in Boston area, whatever it is. Call people out. It's a great hook. In home services, it's tried and true. So hook, then meet. So then it's usually something around your offer. It's like what's the whole point of this ad? And then your CTA, your call to action at the end. So your call to action, we click the button. It can be give us a call, whatever the call to action is at the end. If you actually look at the meat part, if you want to break that down further in terms of a video, then you're going to just do problem, solution, case study. So this is when it's like, problem, are you tired of spending time on the weekend mowing your grass? For example, not a great one, by the way. But if there's the problem, here's the solution. Give us a call, and within 24 seconds, we will have a quote to you, and you'll have a credit card on file and be on the schedule for next week. Case study. Here's Mr. Jones. He wanted to get his weekends back. He hired Augusta Lawn Care, and now look at he's shooting 4 strokes off his golf game. Like there's your kind of like the breakdown of how to run the ad.
Got it. In terms of an offer, what about with a project-based business? Is there like an offer that you can actually give? For example, lawn care as a lower ticket item. So if you were desperate for work, you give like the first week or whatever free in that service. But for a project-based business like hardscaping, it gets really difficult. Is there any, and in any contracting, is there any offer that you've seen that not only worked, but was unique and helpful?
Yeah, I would pair up with other contractors that do things that are adjacent to your services, but not the same. So not competing directly. So for example, if you do landscaping, okay, can you partner up with someone who does waterworks like ponds and fountains, right? And then trying to package your service with freebies from other affiliates, right? So, for example, you might install the water feature and then go to a fish contractor that is koi ponds. Like, hey, they might need some fish. Then you go to the customer you just installed the pond for, the waterfall, and be like, hey, you get 50% off if you buy from me on all your koi fish, right? So like, what are the other services that are adjacent that you can then get affiliate partnerships with? And instead of transacting in terms of like cost per lead with this other contractor, say, hey, pass this value along to my customer. I just need an offer from you that you're going to give to them. And then you package that up. And then all of a sudden, all the package things that you're putting together actually equate more than the cost to the customer that you're charging for your product. And so all of a sudden, you've got someone with a koi fish, you got someone to come do the water treatment, you've got someone to come in and polish the stones on the thing. Like, you've got all this stuff built around it, and there's more value. Another thing is you can do is warranties and guarantees. So for example, like with Copilot, we did something that's crazy, it's unheard of, and it's like, we guarantee you will grow your business. If you don't grow your business by 10%, we will just give you all your money back. No one's done that. And like, people are like, what in the world? How would you even guarantee that? It's like, look, you don't buy software for fancy buttons to click around on. You do it to grow your business. So if I don't think I can deliver on that, I'll get your money back. And the same thing is true if you're installing a project, you're doing a hardscaping job. Like, okay, what are they really trying to solve here? Like, they're not trying to just fill their backyard with rocks. They're trying to enjoy it, or they're trying to get pride and satisfaction of someone being there. They're trying to get some sort of status. So it's like, why not throw like a party in with your $200,000 landscape install project? Throw in the fact that you're going to do an entire party and have all their neighbors come through and look at it, because that's what they're wanting to get. So give them what they really want, not like the rocks and the soil and the gravel. For me, not the software, the buttons and the features. They just want to grow their business. And so I think doing that will unlock like, what's the offer I should give, just by focusing on like, what does the customer want, and then guarantee that, like, take all risk out of that. So on landscape jobs, like, warranty all your work, warranty the plants, do all of these things, because those are all risks that the customer warrants into the buying decision.
This is Rob Murray of Intrigue Media on marketing benchmarks.
How do I determine, as a starting out business owner, especially, to like know whether or not this person is legit and what their strategy is going to help me to bring in more leads into my business?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Michael, I appreciate you bringing it up. When we do our talks, the deal with the audience is that we're going to help them hold marketers, whether it's internal or external, to a higher standard. And so the question, well, how do you do that? Well, the first thing is you need to be informed of what it should look like. A marketer worth their salt will provide a goal based on an outcome, a business outcome. So a lot of proposals I've seen from other companies are like, we'll send out emails, we'll deliver ads, we'll update your website, which is great. But if it's not trying to accomplish a goal, which in most cases for service companies is going to be qualified lead generation. So, we talk about revenue model optimization, and especially in landscaping, you get 10 leads that come through the door. Odds are 5 of them are qualified. Qualified means they have the money to do the service that you provide. So they fit. They're not asking you to do something you don't do, and they have the budget. So out of 5 leads, let's say, that are qualified, you end up with 40% conversion rate. So 2 of them turn into customers. Those customers average sale, let's say it's 50 grand. And then you got your gross margin. Then there's frequency of sale and lifetime value of the customer as other parts of the model. But what a good marketer should be doing is focusing on the top 2. So how do we make it so that we're getting either more leads or better quality leads and qualified leads, and measuring it very transparently? Whereas they should be able to predict it within 90% accuracy. The days are gone where it's like, I don't wish I had a crystal ball. Like, no, we have crystal balls. And let me just walk you through what a crystal ball looks like when it comes to marketing. So if you do, well, in your case, hardscaping, right? So let's say, retaining walls, just as an example. Okay. We build a landing page, for retaining walls. We build a Google ad campaign, and the landing page is optimized for search. It's well as optimized for paid search. So it does both. Paid search and SEO actually overlap quite a bit in terms of best practice. Then we run an ad for retaining walls in your area. And then somebody searches for a retaining wall. They click on the ad that says retaining walls. They end up on a landing page that's about retaining walls, which has badges of trust. So things like the association you're part of, awards you've won, certifications your team has. There's customer testimonials. There's explanations about the process in terms of what it looks like to work with you. So there's clarity created. And then there's a very easy to fill out form to submit, to get a quote. And in that form, the less fields or less questions you ask, the more leads you get, and the more unqualified they are. The more questions you ask and require from somebody, the less leads you get and the more qualified they become. Now, a landing page should convert around 3 to 5%. That's like decent for a landing page. So out of 100 visitors, let's say you get 5 inquiries. Now, with paid search, you can actually predict what the cost per click is going to be to get somebody to your retaining wall page. Retaining wall cost per click can be anywhere between, say, $5 and $10. Sometimes it can be more competitive and less competitive, but say $5 to $10. And for the sake of the argument, let's say $10. So it's going to cost me $1,000 to get 100 people there. It's going to cost me $2,000 to get 200 people there. If I get 2,000 people to my page, I get 10 inquiries. 200 people to my page for $2,000. I get 10 inquiries. If 5 of them are qualified and 2 of them turn into projects, I can see for $2,000, I'm buying 2 clients. That's relatively predictable.
Right.
If a landing page is converting the way it's supposed to, and for everybody listening to this, your website should convert at 3% or better. Landing pages should convert at 5% or better. Of the traffic that comes through, they get an inquiry. An inquiry is a phone call or a form submission. If I know what the cost per click is, I know what money you need to spend in order to get leads. Right. Now it's just a matter of, are the leads qualified and are you closing them with your sales process? It's predictable. Anybody who says otherwise isn't educated.
Gotcha.
So you tell me you have $50,000 budget, and I say, well, your cost per lead is going to be, let's say, $250. I can get you 200 leads.
Is that data somewhat skewed over, I would say, like the surge in demand that especially our industry or other home service industries experience in the last 3 years before this? Or is this like data that you kind of accumulated over many years that you're able to say, like, no, even based on that surge in demand where you may have a bump in qualified customers, we're still at that sort of that conversion rate for qualified leads?
Yeah, I mean, the qualified leads and the conversion rate, so like 50% of leads are qualified and 40% of those qualified leads turn into customers, that is questionable based on the geography and the business that they're in, but it's still a good, starting point in terms of benchmarking. What we saw happen in 2020 and 21 was the cost per lead for a retaining wall was like $70. It was cheap. It was really, really easy to get. Now it's like $250.
Gotcha.
So all of the math still works. It's just getting more expensive, and we're expecting 2024 to be more expensive than 2023.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So just less supply out there, so the demand in ads actually go up, and that increases the price essentially.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's less demand right now from the public.
Right.
So consumer demand has gone down, and competition's actually gone up because a lot of low price competitors entered the market when things were good. So we call it chucking a truck. And they're doing some ads on their own. So there's more people actually playing in the space. There's less people looking for it, and so it's getting more expensive to get good leads through the door.
Let's talk about paid ads then. What are some good best practices or things that you've seen that you shouldn't do when it comes to a Facebook ad, and also maybe even like a Google ad? Or maybe we'll touch on Google ads when we talk about SEO, because you also said paid search. SEO best practices kind of overlap there. So let's focus on Facebook ads. What are some best practices and common mistakes that you typically see of people just launching an ad and getting it out there?
Yeah, so that's the biggest mistake, is just launching an ad and getting it out there. So one of the things that we help people understand is, if you simplify a decision-making process or a buyer's journey into 3 stages, tofu, mofu, and bofu. So top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel. Top of the funnel is somebody that's in a marketplace that's addressed they have a problem. So, I have a big ass puddle in my backyard. Every year I have a problem. I'm researching the problem. Why do I have a giant puddle? What's going on? How do you do drainage? Middle of the funnel is like, I want to find a solution. How do I get rid of this puddle? Should I do it myself? Should I hire somebody? What would it take for me to do it myself? How much does it cost to get someone else to do it? That's middle of the funnel content. Then bottom of the funnel is I want to hire somebody. I want to buy. I'm either going to buy the aggregate, or I'm going to buy the things myself, or I'm going to hire someone to do it. The biggest mistake we find is that people don't have enough budget. So landscapers typically spend 1% of their marketing budget, or 1% of their budget on marketing, which is insanely low. 3% is 3% from our perspective is healthy. So on $1 million revenue, you're looking at $30,000 in marketing budget a year. Now, with the caveat that it's a return on investment, and you should expect 3 to 1 or better gross margin return on investment. So if you invest 30 grand, you should be getting 90 to $100,000 in gross margin as a decent outcome, right? So you spent 30, you made 100. Like that's, not bad ROI, not revenue, gross margin. So the other thing that in this whole idea is that if you only have $30,000 and you're going to put, let's say, $2,000 a month into Google ads, or you put $1,000 in Google ads and $1,000 into Facebook ads or Meta ads, the issue that we see is that your ads aren't showing up enough in search. And Google, by definition, is where people look to buy. People don't look to buy on Instagram and Facebook. Now, there's a caveat because consumer goods actually do sell well on those platforms, but professional services don't sell as easily. So, the average sale of 50 grand, it's rare that someone's going to go to Facebook or Instagram and look for a vendor. Now, people do go look online via Google and then go to a website, and then we see them go to social pages to just like check out the company. What's the culture like? What are their projects like? When was the last time they made a post? Was it from 3 years ago, or was it from 3 days ago? Are they still around? So there's a lot of merit in keeping those social channels relevant and timely. But if you look at a cost per lead straight up, Google search beats out Meta like 10 times out of 10 when it comes to professional services. Now, if you are a $5 million company and you're going to put $100,000, 2% into a marketing budget, maybe 60 of it is going after search, and then 40 of it's being split between emails. So we're going to be nurturing people that have talked to us, and then some Meta ads. And then we build a guide as an example of how to hire a great landscaper. Top 10 questions to ask when hiring a landscape contractor. That content can be either a blog post or a downloadable resource on a website. That's a really good ad for Facebook because the people that click on it are actually in market.
So you offer them something free to catch them.
Yeah, and educate them. Like a lot of times we forget that we do this every day, and as a homeowner, it's their first time, maybe their last time. They don't necessarily know what to do to vet somebody. They don't necessarily know that they should call past projects. They should go knock on someone's door and say, hey, how was it working with this person? They should read all the Google reviews, the 1 stars and the 5 stars. Does the company have a Glassdoor rating? What's the staff say about the business? Are they on LinkedIn? How many staff do they have? Is the owner around or absentee? Like there's a bunch of variables that someone could consider when trying to make a good decision. But as a landscaper, all you need to do is position the way you do things as the way to hire somebody. And assuming you're good at what you do, give people the 5, 7, 10 steps it takes to figure out who's good and who's not.
We want to take a break from today's episode to thank our sponsor, Cycle CPA. It's crucial to review your financial statements on a monthly basis so you can diagnose areas for improving your business's financial health early before they become significant issues. Too many contractors wait until the end of the year to review their financials as they file taxes, when it's often too late to take action to change the outcome. Cycle CPA not only handles bookkeeping and taxes, but they also ensure that you're armed with financial data on a monthly basis to make key business decisions. They offer benchmarking, cash flow forecasting, and assistance in developing targets for financial metrics. With their team of accountants specialized in the hardscape and landscape industry, they currently work with hundreds of companies in this field. Visit cyclecpa.com, and for $200 off, mention the How to Hardscape podcast. Now back to our episode. This is Sean Van Dyke, author of Profit First for Contractors, on selling value, not price.
That client can just go to, they'll find a cheaper price. If you're a company that's priced at what you should be priced at, they can go somewhere and find a cheaper contractor. It doesn't mean that the value is the same and all that. So stop selling price, start selling value. I've heard you say this before. Can you expand on what this means and how a contractor can actually communicate this value to their client?
Sure. One thing I always caution contractors that have been doing it for a little while, 3 years, 5 years, or whatever. I always ask them, hey, are you charging more now than you did, say, 3 years ago? And I'll do this in a presentation too, and people will raise their hand. I'll say, okay, great. Why are you charging more now? And you get all sorts of reasons. Well, price of labor has gone up, materials have gone up. We didn't have insurance when we started, and now we do, and we didn't realize that. It's like, oh, we have to charge more. And then so they go to the very operational things of why they charge more. And then I always ask them, I'm like, well, are any of you better now than you were 3 years ago? And I'm like, oh yeah, we're better. Okay, so your price could go up because you're just better, and you realize that other people aren't as good at the experience and delivering the value and all of that kind of stuff. So if you're charging more now because of all of these factors, that lands on how you price your project. But that price has got a lot of value packed into it because you operate better, you're better. Or you might have figured out that maybe you're in a niche. You've got something very specific to offer that other people don't, and you can charge for that value. So what I warn contractors is, if you think that getting work and staying in business is by price manipulation, dropping your price to get the job, you might be competing against yourself 3 years ago. Don't compete against who you are, meaning there's somebody else coming into the market that doesn't have insurance, that doesn't know what you know, that doesn't have your experience. And you need to tell your customers when they say, oh, you're 30% higher than the other guy. You're like, yeah, I know that guy. I used to be that guy. And if we stayed that guy, we would have been out of business, but we figured a couple of things out. We priced our work according to our value. And that's where I land on, if price is the most important thing for you, this is probably not a good fit for us. But if you're looking for price, call 10 other people. You will eventually find someone that gives you the number you're looking for, but they can't provide, they won't have insurance, they don't have good employees, they don't have the experience, and they're just not as good as us. And don't be afraid to talk about how good you actually are, because customers can smell the lack of confidence a mile away. But when you say, this is our price, this is the value that you get. See, the price is what that statement means. Stop selling price, start selling value. Price is always a point of friction, meaning you got to give us some money. And for most customers, especially in construction, that's always creates some friction, like, I got to give them some money. But you got to focus on, if you'll just do that, look at all the things you get. That's the value part. And that's why anybody buys anything, any product, any service, is not for the price, but for the benefits that somebody gets. I don't want to pay $100,000 for this landscaping project. I don't want to, but I do want to have a nice outdoor space where my family can thrive, where we can have parties so it looks nice. I want all of the benefits that I get if I just pay that price. So you have to focus more on what the customer is going to get, instead of just saying, hey, here's this number that's standing in the way, and then start chipping away at the number. And then this is where a lot of contractors get into a problem, is they'll chip away at the price, but they'll keep the value up there, and they're never going to make any money because it costs some money to go and provide that level of value. So a lot of times I always tell contractors, like, hey, if we got to go get the job, we need money coming in. I don't ever just drop the price. The first thing is to eliminate scope. Okay, if we eliminate the scope of work, but sometimes that doesn't make sense. Like, you can't provide your own materials. We don't allow that because it creates a nightmare. So that's not one of those ways we can reduce the price. But there are other times where it's like, okay, listen, let's just say it's $100,000 project and you think that the customer, or they've expressed like they could pull it off for $90,000, then I might not cut the scope. I might say, okay, here's the deal. I will do this project for $90,000 and basically give you $10,000 worth of value. But here's what I'm going to need from you. When we start the project, I need you and your family. I'm going to come and shoot a video. I'm not going to charge you for it or whatever, but I want you to talk about how excited you are about this project. And then halfway through, when you're sick and tired of us being there and everything's a mess and we're right in the middle of it, I want to take some photos and I want to interview you again to say, as hard as the process is, how much you're enjoying seeing the work go in place. And then at the end of it, we're going to host a party here for all of you and your friends. We're going to invite some designers and whatever, and we're going to film that and photograph that. And you don't have to pay for any of that. So what I'm saying is I will drop my price by $10,000 if you agree that I can get $20,000 or $30,000 of value of marketing out of it. And I want you to become our best salesperson. I'm going to recommend everybody talk to you. So what I'm saying is I'm not just dropping my price. I'm negotiating the value. Sure, I want to get the project. You're only going to spend $90,000. Great. We'll do the project for $90,000, but I'm going to get $30,000 of marketing value that I can repeat and repeat and repeat. That is not dropping your price. That's what I would call that $10,000 difference. It's still going to show up in the profit and loss statement, right? But I'm going to leverage that $10,000 into $100,000 of marketing for years to come. And if a homeowner, I'm going to put that into the contract. Okay, we'll do it, and then you're going to do these. You're going to do these things for us. Then I'll move forward. But just dropping the price, no way.
I think that's a really unique strategy, especially with the right client, right? Especially if you know they're connected in the local community. They know lots of people. That right party, that party I can see going really, really well if they are very much connected in the community and they know lots of people there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, right client, right neighborhood, right project. Yes. It's a little bit risky or whatever, but there's reward for where there's risk, and some people have different levels of risk. And in that example, $10,000, it could be $2,000, it could be $5,000. But what's more important, what comes across in that conversation when you're standing toe to toe to a client and they're trying to get you to drop your price, when you come up with a plan and say, yeah, okay, no problem. How about we do this? Like I said, they're going to be overwhelmed by the confidence that you present and be like, oh, well, we can't get one over on this guy, and we want the project. And it's like what you're asking them to do is, we would like to celebrate your project with you. Will you participate in that with us and help us out? Mm-hmm. I think you get right clients will be like, okay, sure, no problem.
This is Tom Reber of The Contractor Fight on selling in a competitive market.
Great advice there. When it comes to the sales process in this, I know you have your own sales process that you teach there. Does this change at all, or does this get tweaked at all in a scenario where you need jobs? You need to fill that job board. Leads aren't coming in as much at this point in time. Does it get tweaked? Does anything change? Is it about being a little bit more aggressive? How does that change that sales process?
Yeah, so our process is called the Shinfu. It's a pre-qualification process, and it's really just designed to make sure that if you're going to go meet with somebody, that you're on the same page about some stuff. A lot of people are confused. They think it's about charging for estimates, which it's not. We don't want to charge for estimates. I want the damn job, right? And it's designed to protect your time, right? And all these different things. So how our members are using it now is they're still following the process on the phone with people, but they're more likely, if somebody, if I'm on with you and I'm like, hey, we're looking at somewhere between, 10 to 12 grand to do this project. What would you like to do next? Yeah, that kind of sounds within our budget. In our normal full-on turbocharged Shinfu, we're going to push that a little more. In this scenario, All right, we've talked money. All right, and now it's time to get out there and do a deeper, our process, the Shinfu, go deeper in person with them, if that makes sense.
Yep.
You know, because when you're on the phone, and again, if people aren't familiar with this, and you see it, you know, from afar, you think we're all about selling jobs over the phone. No, it's just to make sure that we're a good fit. That's all, which you should be doing anyway as a salesperson. All right. Because if you're just trying to sell over the phone, you lose the eye contact, you lose the body language, the energy, the frequency that you operate. And so don't, you know, whatever tool is at your disposal now, use it. Right. You know, I always coach in our group about each month has a number of available working days in it. I call those the seats on the airplane. We don't want the plane taken off with empty seats. All right. So if you're struggling, you know, what I'm hearing a lot of is job sizes are down. People are still spending some money. All right. That's fine. Don't bitch about it. Just find a way to get in there. You know, if you're, you know, sell some maintenance packages to people, right? Instead of doing the $300,000 backyard getaway, you know, when they say yes to the $75,000 option, shut your mouth and get on the job. Right? Like don't oversell, don't sell past yes. So, you know, you got to be fanatical about filling those seats. And I am, because I know once we're on site, once we're in the yard, you know, good things happen. You're building relationships. This is about gathering up market share and still hitting your numbers. You got to do that or you're going to be out, you know, and I could go on for days about profit margin and gross, you know, 50% gross profit, which we preach. But you know what, if you do the math, and I did the math for our group because I did a training on this recently where I said, a lot of you guys, which it sounds like I'm contradicting myself, but I'm not. 50% gross profit is the fastest way to start making more money right now. However, in the context of things, if you just stick to your guns and go, I'm only going to price and do jobs at a 50%, well, at a time like this, when demand is lower and stuff, you could do that. You might only sell 50 or 60% of those available work days of your capacity at a 50%. If you do the math, you'll probably see that if you're at a 40 or a 42 and you're booking 100% of the time, you're actually going to make more money. You know what I'm saying? So this is what it means to know your numbers. So we always come out of the gate with new contractors and guys that just don't know the numbers, say get a 50%. But then as you grow, as you understand your efficiencies, you've got your overhead, some different things going on, over time, you will find your sweet spot of where your margin needs to be that keeps the ship running, you know?
Is it very specific to do that pre-qualification over the phone? Like potential client reaches out to you, they sent you an email or they went through like a Facebook lead form. Do you say like, get them on the phone? I have been, I guess, just from routine the past few years, just sending an email, and I've got a very specific email of, thanks for contacting us. Let us know a little bit more about your project. Send us a photo of your space so that we can see it. We can give you a price range of where we would be at. And then here's links to our process. Here's links to how we install everything. And we've got very specific things on our website for how in videos and all that. I have noticed that compared to obviously the last few years, I'm not booking as much consultations. My pre-qualification is just narrowing down a lot of people more so than usual. Do you preach like get them on the phone to do that rather than an email, or get them on the phone, talk about that, then send a follow-up email just talking about exactly what you talked about on the phone?
Yeah, that lead comes in. The first thing you do is hit call.
Gotcha.
That's because it's a human being. And listen, I'm all for automations and emails and this stuff, but there's a few things here. Number one, I feel like I'm 54, so I'm probably like close to being like one of those old geezers. It's like back when I was a kid and, you know, blah, blah, we would talk to each other, right? Like my kids are, you know, we have 5 kids. They range from 19 to 24. They're all right in that range there. We have a blended family. And they don't want to pick up the phone and talk to anybody. I got friends that, you know, I'm thinking of a friend of ours, our family friend and a client of one of my wife, who she probably, what'd she make? 400 grand a year, but she's like 32 years old, makes 400 grand a year. You know, people like that, they don't always want to pick up the phone and call people. They want to hide behind text, hide behind email. And so this is a separator. When you call right away, right? I mean, I had a lead come in yesterday. I had him called back within 3 minutes. Like literally. And the only reason it took me that long is I had to go take a pee, right? And then I came back and I hit call. And so, and we moved forward with things. So it was great. Speed kills in a good way, right? On the athletic field, if you're faster, you're better. Time kills deals, we say all the time here. So if you can pick up the phone and then use your content, like if I'm on with you, I'm like, hey, tell me about the yard that you want to build. There's some questions, open-ended questions, right? And all that other stuff. And then once I get a good sense for what's important to them, this is step one of the motive, what we call it. I'm going to transition to the money. I'm saying, hey, based on what you're telling me, are you okay if we talk about what this might cost? Or what the money would look like? Yeah. All right. Well, listen, people in your situation, they do one of two things. They've gone all out. They've gone crazy, built this amazing backyard getaway with zip line from the balcony into the swim pond and stripper poles and lights and, whatever it is, right? You're going to have a good time. You're going to paint this huge picture. And for something like that, you might be $200,000 to $300,000. Or we could come in and do the patio that you mentioned, the retaining wall and the fire pit and a small water feature. And for something like that, you might be 75 to 100. Which of those conversations would you like to have next? Mm-hmm. They will always walk you to your budget when you bracket it like that. And then if they're just like, well, shit, your lower number is even way higher than what I want to spend. Well, then we don't need to go out there. Right. Because nothing's going to change, right? It's not going to come down a whole lot, if anything. It's probably going to go up based on site conditions and this and that. So that's where when you get people on the phone, and then while you're on the phone with them, you're texting them links to your content, like you were sharing that you do. You should be creating content that does a lot of the heavy lifting of the sales for you. All right. These things all working together, the human touch, the content for all the social proof and education, and just the fact that you were like Johnny on the spot with the communication, those things right there give you a better chance of selling more work right now.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast episode. I hope you got some value from these sound bites throughout the year, and I hope that you can go back and take a look at each of these different interviews that we did with each of these guests. Maybe you can learn a little bit more. We also, if you are interested more in marketing, especially going into next year and preparing for that, now is a good time to get that website updated, get it created if you haven't already done that, getting stockpiling reviews. And if you want to learn more about what I do for marketing in my business, this is, I would say, something that I am very much interested in. We do have a 5-part marketing series. This is almost 5 hours of me going over part 1 being creating a client's avatar, part 2 being where to find your client's avatar, part 3 being making content for your client's avatar, part 4 being results, benchmarks, and budgeting, and then part 5 being if you need leads now, you should listen to this. And I hope that helps you with your marketing into the next year here. And thank you for 5 years of the How to Hardscape podcast. Everybody that has liked, commented, shared, and done whatever you did to help us get to this point. I do really appreciate you. And we need to thank our sponsors.
Cycle CPA. If you're looking for bookkeeping, accounting, CFO services, reach out to Cycle CPA at cyclecpa.com. Let them know How to Hardscape sent you for money off their services there. And Knowledge Tree Consulting. If you're looking for efficiency consultants who have a lot of experience in our industry, check out Knowledge Tree Consulting at knowledgetreeconsulting.com.
And once again, if you're looking for a software to dive into, especially in this off season, the How to Hardscape headquarters can help you budget, estimate job costs, and so much more, including our installation courses, which you can use for yourself or also training your employees as well. That's members.howtohardscape.com, or send me a message at howtohardscape on Instagram. And we look forward to meeting with you next week on the How to Hardscape podcast.